All right. It's late Sunday night, and Evolution is over. It's finished up. I watched some of the post-show press conference stuff, and want to say a couple things. Quick thoughts now that it's in the books. Um, and I will talk about this more on the Mindless Wrestling podcast this week. But as you can see, I'm representing the now new Women's World Champion, Naomi. And she cashed in the Money in the Bank briefcase at the end of the show. She's the women's world champion, and great way to end the show. It was WWE's for me. If we want to just count start to finish, it was WWE's best pay per view or PLE of the year, and there was no it was the best show of the year, start to finish for sure. Um, and look, it's a testament. The women, all the women on that card, up and down the card, did they were not going out there to mail it in. Everybody was turned up to 11. And there were no bad matches on the show. And look, it's very important just to look at Naomi's journey. Okay. Look, it's way too many times pro wrestlers, particularly in this modern era. For me, modern starts when I started watching again, which was 2012. Um, there were just There've been one thing that's become kind of a trope now are, the whole the office didn't want me, and that's basically when, somebody who hasn't gotten all the way to the top, they get put in an angle or storyline to see them kind of finally, you know, recognize, or achieve what they've been trying to get to all this time. And a common trope of that now is for them to either cut promos or do like interviews in real life or whatever, where they go on and on about how, the people in charge didn't want me in this position, but hey, I'm here. Right. And I have grown to absolutely hate that because most of the time, the majority, I'd say the more than half the time, the vast majority of the time, the people who were doing that, like, they're not people who were stuck at the bottom. They're people who were like three-quarters or four-fifths of the way already up to near the top. And, you know, they wanted that last fifth or that last fourth or whatever, right? And which is perfectly fine, right? You shouldn't want it. It's perfectly fine to want it all, right? But you're in a business where, you know, 90 some percent of the people, or 95, maybe even 98% of the people, never even sniff you know, winning a world title or being in a main event, right? Or what have you. And, way too often the people who are cutting these promos and, going on and on about it and making it their whole persona are people who are in that, who've already tasted that top 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever, right? Um, I mean, just, I'm not going to name a bunch of names, but but normally it's like people who have been world champion already, who've already been in main events, who've already even maybe beaten some big name people, right? But they're going on about how the office didn't want them, the booker didn't want me, blah blah blah. And in Naomi's case, look, in 2012, when I first started watching wrestling, Naomi was she was a funkadactyl. Okay, what does that mean? What is a funkadactyl? Y- 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 You, if you didn't if you didn't start watching wrestling until like 2014 or so, then you don't even know what a funkadactyl was, right? Her and this another lady wrestler, Cameron, they were dancers for this guy named Brodus Clay. Brodus Clay was a wrestler, not a very good one, and he had this gimmick. He was the Funkasaurus, and he would come out and dance, and they were like his, backup dancers or whatever. Naomi and Cameron, and she did that for like she was doing that for almost 2 years. And this was after she'd been in NXT, what it was at the time, or maybe FCW or Florida, I don't know, whatever it was, whatever they were calling it at the time. She went through that system, and she won like what was the NXT Women's title at the time. And so it's not like she wasn't brought in like back in the day. There were women who were hired to be valets, right? Or and whatever, right? That's what they were hired for. They weren't hired to be wrestlers, right? She was hired to be a wrestler, and she went through the developmental system in NXT. She even won their version of the NXT Championship at the time. And then so she comes up to the main roster, and they turn her into a funkadactyl. Okay, that's how she started. Okay, she did not start like winning a U.S. title, or as part of some big storyline, or winning a world title even, or being in big matches. She did not start doing any of that. She For almost 2 years, she barely got to wrestle at all. She was a backup dancer for Brodus Clay. Okay, so and then she got over when she started wrestling. She did get over, and she won the SmackDown Women's title at WrestleMania 33. And well, she'd won it previously in that year, but she got injured in that match, so she had to vacate it. And then so she just won it back at WrestleMania 33. And they used to Kitty walking back and forth. And he's a big cattail in front of my face. But anyway, um, she was SmackDown Women's Champion, and she had like one title defense on a pay per view before she lost it at SummerSlam like 5 months later, or 4.5 months later, or whatever. And she had one defense on the pay per view between winning it back at WrestleMania and losing it at SummerSlam, and that was against Lana, who was not and probably still is not very good, and is not somebody who anyone would be interested in watching challenge for a title on pay per view. Okay? And that's what she got stuck defending it against. And then when she finally had the defense against a good opponent, she lost. Okay. And then from that point forward, she was a mid Carter tag team or whatever. Um, there's been a bunch of different tag teams. Um, she was women's tag team champion with Sasha Banks, and then she left. Right. So she had to leave because her and Sasha had won the women's tag team titles, and they had been told that the women's tag team titles were going to get booked well, and all that type of stuff, and then they ran into a situation where it looked like that wasn't going to happen. So her and Sasha left, and so when we talk about the office didn't want me as a trope, as a thing they're saying. Look, I don't even think that's true for her that they didn't want her, but it's just they saw her in a certain role, and that's it. And and again, in her case, it was legit. 'Cause remember, she started out dancing for Brodus Clay. Okay, 'cause some of these people who go around saying the office didn't want them started out in major storylines. Some of them you know, were holding a major title within you know a short amount of time, a year, maybe a little over a year after they debuted. Okay. Some of these folks were in big matches in NXT and big showcase matches at art, and in big showcase matches on the main roster, and they were doing all these things, but they just didn't get that one big victory to put them in the main event of WrestleMania or something, and they would go on and on about how the Booker didn't want me, the office didn't want me. Um, she's one of these people where that is again, it's not that they didn't want her employed, but no, they did not want her in the main event. They did not see her as somebody who you would do all of this with. She was doing this year. She had to leave. Okay, she had to leave. So her and Sasha left, and then she turned up in TNA, and then she was there for about 6 months, and both she and TNA both made the most out of it. Salute to everyone involved, and she came back, and there have been some times where even after coming back where it looked like they were just gonna slot her in, ultimately back, kind of where she was before she left. But here she is now, and now she is the women's world champion. Um, she's taken her character in a whole direction that I think none of us were really expecting, and she's taken it to a whole new level. And you know, and she hasn't done it at anyone's expense. Like she hasn't done it by crapping on any of her coworkers, either in kayfabe or real life. You know, uh, she hasn't used some segment of fan resentment towards someone else to her own advantage. She has not done that. Okay, she has believed in herself. She bet on herself. She has gone to bat for herself, and you can do that without crapping on other people, right? And it took a while, but here we are. Here she is, and so just just so happy for her because I don't do the you deserve it stuff very often because I mean it's a kayfabe wrestling championship, right? I mean, you know, that's the people playing the roles, they don't deserve to have their fictional character win things or whatever, right? Because that's the whole thing with the you deserve it thing, right? It's basically we're rooting for the people. We're saying that because the person, in this case Trinity Fatu, we're saying that because she has had to endure a bunch of crap in her wrestling career, right? Normal, so therefore her character deserves, you know, to win the championship, even though her character is a heel and does all sorts of dastardly things, right? Naomi, the character, does not deserve anything, right? Um, but Trinity Fatu has deserved this opportunity for some time now, and again, this is a real example, right? This is not somebody again who had already been booked to get 85, 90% of what they always wanted, and they're mad about the last 10%. Okay, this is not that. Okay, Naomi is somebody who's been pushing and fighting and enduring a bunch of shit for a decade now, over a decade now. So I just wanted to give her props and give her flowers. Um, she does deserve it. Okay, yes, she does, and not just for how well she's performed, but she's put up with a lot of crap, right? So you know, so yeah, Trinity Fatu deserves this opportunities that she's been getting this year. Naomi, the character, does not deserve the world title, but this is one of those cases where you know, as long as you're not in the building, like, it's okay to root for the bad guy, right? Um, I was rooting for Naomi to cash in the briefcase from while I was watching at home. You know, uh, Now if I were if I were to be in the building tomorrow night, Monday Night Raw, when she came out with the briefcase, I'd boo, right? That's what you're supposed to do, right? But as you see, I'm wearing the T-shirt, so it's obvious where I stand on it on her, on her as a wrestler. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got for Evolution. This was a long, very exciting weekend of wrestling between Great American Bash and All In and this show, Evolution, and then next weekend we got Slammiversary. So, Saturday night's main event, Sloop Goldberg. We'll talk about him more on the Mindless Wrestling podcast. But anyway, I'm not going to go too long here. This is long enough. So, thank you as always, and we will talk to you later this week. And like I always say when I sign off, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you guys. Till next time. And remember, proceed with caution.